Morning, it's Pull Apart Paul again. Been asked quite often via Facebook and a few other colleagues how I actually go about my restoration work on the plastics and get them looking so good. Here today, we're just about to start the second Tedalex front plastics restoration, which involves obviously the seven dials and the front fascia and the plastic display, which has all been pushed out. Now, first of all, this is how I generally set up the fascias or the plastics or the workspace so that you have a controlled environment. And all this are nails with a bit of tape suited to fit the push-on fitting, and that keeps them nice and stable. I can turn this around upside down and nothing falls off, and that's so that during the spray painting process you can get up underneath and do all of that. Now, as far as the display goes, again, similar things. I've just used 4 nails, wrap tape around it, and that way I can very quickly put the cover on the display and it just stays there. And I can spray on that and it's not going to contaminate the surface at all. All right, now just as a broad overline, what type of products do I use in the restoration process? Well, stage 1 is actually removing the paint from all of these parts. For the smaller parts, I start off by just using a 200 grit coarse sandpaper, just very lightly, and then I go down to very quickly a wet and dry, and that's on what I use the wet and dry for is on the square surfaces so that I get those very flat. And then what I move to are these products here. These are Modeler's sanding products. This is actually, that's the name of the product. It comes with 3 bars, and on each side they're a different grade. And to give you an idea, these are fairly well used. You got 240 and 400. So on that side it's 400, on this side it's 240. And then you have 600, 800, and 1000, 1200. Now I don't use the 1200 much, but I do use the 1000 on the top of the fascias. So when I need a really sharp edge, which I will need on this, I use it on there. But what I'll be using it on is the repair, getting all this nice and pardon my wound, to get all this nice and flat. And again, the goal here is, and this is the challenge, is to make this look factory again. Now, this is the last Tedalex that I did. Looking at the plastic there, looking at the dials, and what we have. That is our goal out of this fascia. All right, so we have our sanding blocks. The next thing that we need to use is our specialist modeler's putty. I've always been a Tamiya person most of my life, so it's not without guessing that that's what I will use. Very similar to automotive grade putty, except it's already pre-mixed in the tube. You can actually purchase a lot more expensive putty than this. I think we're looking at This is in Australian dollars, about $8. And some of the putty goes for up close to $30. So that gives you some idea of the price range. No need to go for any more than this in my mind, because what we're going to do is we're going to build up the edges where there's damage so they're square again. So we're going to square off this edge to get it almost to paint stage, get everything perfect, and where there are defects and there's no more paint left on here, we're going to build that up and then just sand it back like we're working on a vehicle. It's exactly the same thing. So we will start off at a low side sandpaper and then gradually get through to, on the finished product, I will use the 1200 on that and may even go higher depending on the finish. All right, so after we've done that, the next step is to prepare with a wax and grease remover, again, just like automotive, and then using a form of etch primer. So I use this. It already actually lays out. It's a bit different to automotive, very, very fine. And as the name of the product goes, it's 1500. So technically what they're saying is that this lays out to the equivalent of 1500 grit on the surface. So all I do is I do a very, very fine sand with a 2000 grit wet and dry, and then it's prepared for the painting stage. Now, there are many paints open to you. There are acrylic colours. This is just for an example. I don't use these on radios, but this is just some of the colours that I use in other areas. There are your normal enamel paints, which that's just a sample. I have a lot of those. And then you have your plastic-based paints, which is your automotive type paints. All right, so I always carry some thinners. The thinners are used to not thin the paint down. I don't use that, but because my paint's already come, I buy the pre-thinned, but it's used to clean my water spray gun. So what do I use? This is the brand of, well, we just happen to be spraying metallic silver on that previous face, so I thought I'd show you this. This is an automotive grade single shot finish. There's no need to spray a clear coat over the top of this with the finish that I'm going for, but you can do it if you're looking for a gloss. Now this is set up for 0.3 guns, 0.3 spray guns. I'm using a 0.5 tip in this one, and it actually sprays okay. The reason I've gone for that is that the paint designed for the 0.5 is not as robust locally here anyway. The ones that I compete, robust enough to last or give me the durability of a fascia for a CB radio, and the finish, because we're trying to get the OEM look. All right, so that's a bit about the paints and just some of the items that I use in order to lay down the color. Now the gun that I use is an Iwata airbrush. This is a gravity feed unit, so it does not have the cup at the top, and the only reason I've chosen this process is I'm clumsy, so the last thing I want is to spill paint everywhere. Okay, so the bottle itself fits onto the bottom of the Iwata gun. The compressor screws in here, and this is our trigger here. So we pull this backwards, and you can control the spray coverage by just pulling it in backwards and forwards. After each clean, you have to dismantle the gun and clean it thoroughly with thinners, and then apply a couple of drops of automotive oil. Okay, so this is my compressor that I use. It's just over half a horsepower. I think it's about 3/4 of a horsepower. I only use this to between 15 and let's say 30 psi. We have a water separator, which is very important in this. It's important enough in automotive, but in this, because you're spraying so fine, the slightest bit of water in your mix just ruins your work. So continually you're emptying or pulling the valve down here in order to release. So it's very simple. You just set to here what you want and you spray. And yep, you can run this into a manifold, run several guns off it, and from there. Now, these units, you can get them with quite a lot of storage in them. This I've elected because of the amount of work that I do. I just want the pump to pump real time. I don't really need to have storage for the type of work that I'm doing. But to give you some idea on that type of setup with a quality Iwata gun, these are water guns. Even though this is an entry point gun, the Neo. I think the Neos sell for about $200 on their own Australian. The compressor is around $140 to $150. You can generally get these in deals. But the route that I was going down, I explored all of the cheap guns that are available on the internet. It's really not a path I wanted to go down. There was too many pitfalls. So from an automotive perspective, Iwata is a big brand. It's also a big brand in airbrushing. I would encourage anybody to start with a big brand purely from a spare parts perspective. A lot of these companies that you buy cheap guns from, there are no spare parts. And a lot of the needles that they're selling, they're not accurate like this system here. So personally, I would buy more Iwata guns, and I intend to do so as the need arises with this plastic restoration work. All right, that's the video for today. Hope that helped. I'm going to start sanding this now and the parts, and we'll start getting into rebuilding this front fascia for the Tedlex TE6000. Hope this helped.